Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm your host, Jordan Jones. It's Monday, May 3rd, here in West Lafayette. It's finals week. The semester is winding down, and by the end of the week, it will only be the outgoing seniors left on campus. We're still 17 weeks away from the start of college football season, though it was a busy week for Purdue football, with the NFL draft having been completed. Purdue has made it back-to-back years with a pair of Boilermakers being selected in the draft. Meanwhile, across the street at Mackey Arena, the coaching staff is finalized and some more in-state talent is coming to Katy Court. Let's go ahead and dive right in, starting with some of that hoops news. And as we've talked about on the show quite a bit here this spring since the season ended, Purdue has had two major assistant coaching departures that they've had to replace. First, Micah Shrewsbury left as Purdue's associate head coach to become the head coach at Penn State. And then Steve Lutz left to be the head coach at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Purdue first brought back Paul Lusk, a former Matt Painter assistant, who was most recently an assistant for Greg McDermott up at Creighton. And then Purdue now has rounded out the coaching hires by bringing in Terry Johnson. This is finally completing the assistant coaching staff, and Johnson brings some very strong experience in his resume. He was an assistant at Butler for 10 years under Brad Stevens and Chris Holtman, and then followed Holtman along to Ohio State in the summer of 2017. Assistant there for Holtman's entirety of time at Ohio State, and now he comes to Purdue. Very interesting hire, very good hire. One key thing for him that really could help Purdue is that all of his experience comes in the Midwest region. With Butler, with Ohio State, spent some time at Purdue Fort Wayne as well. That really is just a lot of time in the Midwest where, Purdue is looking to replace Micah Shrewsbury, an incredibly strong recruiter. Terry Johnson obviously has been a big part of Ohio State's staff as they have really overhauled that roster with a lot of talent. Good recruiter there. He was known to work with big guys a lot, which does present some interesting dynamics. That's always kind of been Brandon Brantley's specialty. The one missing area was the offensive end. But, I think as a whole, Purdue's staff is very well-rounded now. I think Matt Painter has seen so much on the offensive end in the last 6 or 7 years or so since he really reestablished the brand of Purdue's offense. I don't think there's any reason to worry, and I think the one really good positive of Terry Johnson is some of his experience coaching on the defensive end. That's an area where Purdue could really use a step up. I think their offense is going to be really good this year, assuming Travion Williams comes back. I don't know how many worries you have on that end of the floor, especially with Trey Kaufman-Renn, Caleb First coming in. Your guards get another year of experience. Jaden Ivey, Brandon Newman poised to take a big step next year. On the defensive end, Purdue has been effective enough. They were right around 25th in Ken Pom defensive efficiency last year, but it's always been kind of known to be a national title contender, you need to be in the top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Purdue will seek to become a little bit better on defense. Johnson is a really good guy to help do that. Now, at this point, all Purdue has to do with the coaching staff is replace its two graduate assistants. P.J. Thompson and Grady Eifert have had their eligibility expire. Remember, you just get 2 years as a graduate assistant. I don't know where they really go from here to find replacements. There aren't many recent players who really make a lot of sense the way that PJ and Grady did. I think you'd have to go back a little ways, and these graduate assistant jobs, They don't pay all that well, so it's a very niche audience that you can really get to go become a GA. This is no reason to worry by any means about Purdue's coaching staff. It's a pretty routine hire, but we'll see where they end up going for those. Then our other piece of basketball news for the week came last week when Braden Smith committed to Purdue, a 6-foot point guard from Westfield High School down in suburban Indianapolis, rated as a 3-star recruit by both 24/7 Sports and Rivals. And this was one of the quicker processes I've ever seen in terms of recruitment. Purdue offered a week ago from today, last Monday, and on Thursday, Smith officially committed to the Boilermakers. Averaged 22 points a game for Westfield last year, 45% from beyond the arc. He is a very true point guard. His strengths lie in his passing ability and his three-point shooting. Purdue was the first high major to offer him. I've looked at his film quite a bit, and I really think if he would have held out on, kept his recruitment open, you would have seen some more high majors come into play. I'd be really surprised if he would have gotten a Purdue offer this early and no one else came in on him. If you haven't seen some of his tape, I'd check it out. All sorts of good stuff out on YouTube. Just a really pure shooting stroke, and his passing ability is really fun to watch. Very good court vision. He sets up his teammates really, really well to score. Certainly there are some limitations, notably the height. 6 foot flat. That's a small guard. There's no doubt about it. He is well built for being 6 foot, but, obviously if there's any way he gets a late growth spurt, no one would complain about that. Because of that height, he tends to finish below the rim, which isn't always the easiest to pull off in the Big Ten. He plays incredibly hard, and that will help him as he grows on defense into the Big Ten level and has to guard, opposing ones and twos who are far more athletic. That'll help him a lot. Just the energy and toughness will translate to college right away. And one thing that's, notable about him is it's not like he comes from a powerhouse high school program. Westfield has never been one of the better programs in the northern Indianapolis suburbs, but he's made them into a very competitive program, similarly to how Isaiah Thompson did with Zionsville when he was down there. They hadn't always been all that competitive. I believe they got to a semi-state with Isaiah Thompson there, so this could be a similar situation where Smith could lead Westfield to a big run senior year, especially now that Carmel has lost quite a bit from their state title team. Regardless, though, Smith joins 4-star guard Fletcher Lawyer from Fort Wayne Homestead High School in the 2022 recruiting class. The common denominator, not hard to find. These guys are both elite shooters, and that's something that Matt Painter has valued above every other trait in a guard ever since he had those 2 bad years. Robbie Hummel leaves, Lewis Jackson leaves, Ryan Smith leaves, and Purdue had a lot of guards who just really couldn't make shots for a little bit. Ronnie Johnson, Anthony Johnson, Tyrone Johnson. It wasn't always pretty. Bryson Scott wasn't a great shooter, though he brought some really positive traits elsewhere. Purdue's always wanted to make sure they don't fall into that trap again, where they recruited guys for the recruiting rankings and not for the fit. This is a really good job by Matt Painter to make sure he gets some shooters in a class. He really has delivered on that promise to take a shooter in every class since then. And it's interesting because one of the perceptions at this time a year ago was that the 2022 class in Indiana wasn't going to be all that strong and that it could provide Purdue some challenges in filling out a class, which we already knew was going to be a 4-scholarship class. But you get fortunate, Fletcher Lawyer moves in, moves to Fort Wayne from Clarkston, Michigan. Granted, Purdue could have gotten him out of Clarkston either way, but it's an in-state kid, gets people fired up. Braden Smith, a jump that wasn't foreseen by many, but he's a Boilermaker now. You've got CJ Gunn from Lawrence North heading to IU. Tay Davis from Warren Central heading to Louisville to play for Chris Mack. So, this class is already starting to materialize. Obviously, if you look at the recruiting sites, they'll include all the Lalamere players in the Indiana rankings. I think we all know that's not real. If you go to Lalamere, that doesn't mean you're from Indiana. But the biggest fish left now, and he is a big fish. It's 6'8" forward Jalen Washington from Gary Westside. He's a top 25 prospect nationally. Very, very high 4-star recruit. He missed most of his sophomore year at Westside with an ACL injury, but he's fully healthy now. Certainly spent a little bit of time this year during high school season recovering from that knee injury still, but he took Westside all the way to the semi-state where they lost to Brian Waddell and Carmel, the eventual state champions. And Washington's really getting some headlines for his AAU performances for Mean Streets, strong AAU program out of Chicago. And in fact, it was interesting this weekend up in Fort Wayne at a big AAU tournament. The championship game was Washington's Mean Streets against Braden Smith's Grand Park Premier. Washington got the win in that one. But, Purdue offered him in 8th grade. They have not let up on the recruiting trail. Getting him would be huge. Obviously, it's not going to come easy. A lot of the Big Ten schools are in on him right now. North Carolina extended an offer to him last night. So Purdue's got their hands full here, but you really hope to see that, maybe this can help work out. Maybe that proximity to home can help. West Lafayette's not all that far away from Gary, and getting him would be huge. The 2022 class still has 2 more available scholarships as of now. You've already got the 2. You got 2 more graduating. You'll have the scholarship that was freed up when Aaron Wheeler left. You have Trevion Williams, Eric Hunter, and Sasha Stefanovic all scheduled to graduate next year. Could you get a 5th scholarship in there? Absolutely. It's the transfer portal era. I am not saying that I think there are any logical fits to transfer out of Purdue after this year. I'd be surprised if it happens. But also you could look at a player heading to the NBA, going to the draft early. That logical answer would be Jaden Ivey. I don't really pay a lot of attention to NBA draft stuff, but if Ivey can improve that 3-point percentage, I see no reason why he wouldn't be a first-round pick next year. If you can get to be a first-round pick, that's pretty tough to turn down. So, at least 2, maybe 3 scholarships left for Purdue in this class. Any updates over the summer, I will bring to you here on Boilers and Beyond. Hopefully, if you're Purdue, you'd like to get this class filled out sooner rather than later, ahead of that November signing date, but a good start and a lot of promising leads out there still. Switching notes to football a little bit, right? It's May. There's nothing we want to talk about more than football. But the second consecutive year, 2 Boilermakers have been taken in the NFL draft. Last year, it was Bryson Hopkins and Marcus Bailey. Those guys both went on Saturday last year. Rondale Moore, 49th overall to the Arizona Cardinals. Derrick Barnes, 113th, heading up to Detroit to play for the Lions. To get started with Moore, this feels like a fantastic fit. He joins a talented and promising young quarterback in Kyler Murray, the former Oklahoma superstar. You've got DeAndre Hopkins as one of the best outside receivers in the NFL to go along with him. They've got Christian Kirk, another good young receiver. Veteran A.J. Green is in Arizona now. These are a lot of guys for Rondale Moore to learn from. for him to kind of grow up in the league with a little bit. And I think more than anything, this offensive system fits him very well. The head coach there is Cliff Kingsbury, former Texas Tech coach, coached Patrick Mahomes there. Kingsbury doesn't mind opening up that offense, letting the ball fly a little bit. I think this is a spot where Moore is really going to have some good opportunity. I think he will almost certainly play special teams as well as a returner, and we'll see what his role looks like. Is he an every down receiver? Is he more of, a 50% of the snaps type guy? We'll see, but it'll be a lot of fun to follow him. That's a really cool offense he could play in. And then Derrick Barnes going up to Detroit. I think that's a really good result for him. Derrick Barnes joining David Blau as Boilers up in the Motor City. The Lions could certainly use some help on defense. They are not in a great spot as a franchise right now, but Barnes should be able to provide some help. He really gained some notoriety because of his versatility. And you'll remember that 2019 season, or 2018-2019, kind of going from a down lineman to a stand-up linebacker in Bob Diaco's system when he stood up and played inside linebacker. Really showed that he could do a little bit of everything. 7.5 sacks in 2019. Impressed a lot of people at his pro day. There was some thought that maybe Derrick Barnes could have gone off the board Friday in either the second or third round. I want to say he was the 9th pick of the 4th round on Saturday. So all in all, a really good draft spot for him. Hopefully the playing time is there. The Lions certainly need help. They have a first-year coach in Dan Campbell, very aggressive, very fiery guy. I think that could be a good fit with Derrick Barnes. We did see as well Tyler Coyle and Grant Hermans signed as priority free agents. Both these guys signed almost immediately after the draft. Coyle going down to Dallas to play for Jerry Jones's Cowboys. I know I've said this almost every time I bring him up, but just what an interesting case study that Tyler Coyle is. Has a great career at UConn, heads out, season gets shortened because of COVID, and then he gets hurt for a little bit. And in the pre-draft process, all we heard was that Bob Diaco really miscast him by putting him as an outside linebacker when he really should have been playing safety. I don't disagree with that at all. I think he would be a much better fit there. But, he was highly productive at UConn. It was a horrible defense. It's UConn football. They're not good. But his pro day was fantastic. His measurables were off the charts. There was some talk maybe he could sneak into the 6th, 7th round. Either way, a priority free agent. Not a great defense down in Dallas, but maybe he'll get a shot at the roster. Maybe it could be a practice squad situation. But, regardless, he's down in Dallas. And then Grant Hermans, the longtime anchor of the offensive line at left tackle, one of the last guys around who came into Darrell Hazel's Purdue program. Boy, how things have changed. Hermans was really an anchor for the Purdue offensive line, though. Especially after 2017, Purdue had a pretty good line. 2018, it wasn't bad, but 2019, you saw him at left tackle and Mac McCann at right tackle really control that offensive line that had a lot of questions on the interior around them. The Jets have spent first-round picks on offensive linemen the last 2 years. It's a crowded room. I think at 6'7", Hermans is probably too big to move inside, so his best projection right now will probably be to make the roster as a 3rd or 4th tackle. Even a practice squad situation would be great. Anything to keep these guys in the league for a while. That's good money, and you just have a chance to go move on once you're in there. Regardless, awesome to see Purdue put a streak again together. We had the 21-year streak of Purdue players being drafted end in 2019. That adds up. You look at the Hazel era, when that talent would be coming through. There wasn't a lot of NFL talent heading out in that draft class, but it's a long road back. 21 years is a really long time. You can look back at the 2004 draft. 9 Boilermakers went that year, mostly from the defensive side of the ball on Tiller's most talented team, if not best team. An early look at next year's draft, the streak looks very promising to continue. Some early mock drafts have both George Karlaftis and David Bell going in the first round. Karlaftis seems to be the more likely one. He could be Purdue's first round pick since 2011 when Ryan Kerrigan went to Washington. David Bell, he has all the tools to be an NFL wide receiver. Would love to see him continue to build off of a really good fall he just had. Outside of those two, who could be first rounders, DeMarcus Mitchell playing alongside George Karlaftis on that defensive line could see his name get called. Jalen Alexander up there as well. He's an experienced linebacker who certainly would love to get a shot in the league. And I think offensive tackle Greg Long, the UTEP transfer, he'll be back this year for Purdue. Whether he plays left tackle or right tackle remains to be seen, but he's pretty talented. He really battled injuries for forever at UTEP. I think he's going to be in a really good spot to move into that position where Grant Herman's was here this weekend. And then a little bit of transfer portal news to wrap up. On the last show, we brought to you a rundown of the Malik Carr saga. He's officially committed to Michigan State. The one-time transfer rule has gone through, so come this fall, we may see Malik Carr take the field for the Spartans when they come to Ross-Ade Stadium. Certainly an interesting situation. No idea. We haven't heard anything about his basketball pursuits, but anything new, I'll be sure to bring it to you here. And then Purdue did pick up a transfer this weekend, and this is one of the transfers I've been more fired up about. Now, I will add, though, last year I was awful fired up about DJ Johnson from Iowa. That one didn't really materialize, but DeMar J. Lewis from Indiana committing to Purdue, 4 years of eligibility remaining. Product out of Griffin, Georgia. Defensive lineman, probably going to play defensive tackle at Purdue, especially if he can put a little bit more weight on. At one time, this guy was an Auburn commit, had a lot of SEC offers coming out of high school, and this could be a really big pickup for Purdue. He's a very high-ceiling player. Obviously, you get offers from those SEC schools. You can play. That SEC talent, it's still better than Big Ten talent. If you disagree with me, you can watch Purdue-Auburn from a couple years ago, or even more recently, you can watch Ohio State-Alabama from last year. Lewis is cousins with Purdue defensive back Brandon Callaway. That is likely a big role in him coming to West Lafayette. But, if you look at next year's front four, you have George Karlaftis, you have DeMarcus Mitchell, and then that inside is a question mark. As a redshirt freshman, I don't know that Lewis is ready to play every down in there, but if he can give Purdue some quality snaps, combine that with some guys, Branson Dean, Suleiman Kapaka, Stephen Fauchot maybe, Greg Hudgens, it could be interesting, and it would really help Purdue stop the run better than they have the last few years, which has been a problem. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for spending some time with me. Next time, we will be celebrating our 50th episode of Boilers and Beyond. Stay tuned for more details. It'll be a fun episode for you all. I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter @BoilersBeyond. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, it's May in Indiana. Enjoy it.